So yeah, last time I made the monitors. This time I'm going to do the crate. I'm going to start the same way I did the last one. This one I might actually be able to finish in class. But yeah, I'm just going to start doing that. So if you guys are creating like cubes and stuff like that, I'm assuming this guy is somewhat cubical dimensions. If you do want that, if you hold Control while you're making a cube or a box, it will make it uniform on X and Y. Unfortunately, I don't know. There's no snap to make it uniform up and down as well, but that's okay. So I'm gonna start off making this box here. It'll just be this base. I might make it a little longer. I'll convert it to an editable poly. And I'm just going to do like light chamfers, just like the big stuff. I'm not really going to be worried about, tiny little minutia for now. Just the big things. And so that'll be my base. And put in the next guy here. Excuse me. Chamfer this up. And a lot of this stage of the process is really just understanding your object, because some of the concepts you guys have are going to be somewhat blurry or loose, and you may just not know exactly what things are. And at this stage is when you figure things out, how things actually connect together, how things are supported, where things open, where things hinge, what kind of locks are on things, that kind of stuff. So it's a good time to start figuring out that kind of detail. So I'm gonna make okay, maybe not that big. Maybe I want to make those chamfers bigger, so I'm going to make a new box. If you guys are making new boxes for your old boxes, one of the annoying things is, like, I have this box, I made a new one, and I want to align it over top of this one. There's a really quick way to align stuff in Max if you haven't used it before. Up here, by default, this tool looks like this. It's a white box and a gray box, and if you hover over it, it says align. If you click on it and select the second little lightning bolt Harry Potter setting there, what that'll let you do is, once you have a box or any object selected, with that on, you'll see your cursor turns into a little lightning bolt too. You just click on another box, it'll just align those two objects just instantly together. It's just a nice way of quickly getting an object where you want, especially when you're modeling in perspective view and you're kind of just making things wherever the hell they are. So it's a nice quick way of doing that. Alright, so start off by a ring, and chamfer these guys here, probably fairly small. Actually, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to chamfer these guys a little bit bigger. I'm going to chamfer them what I want them to be up top. So I want them to be a little bit more sizable, something like that. And then I'm going to select this bottom face and use my outline tool to make it smaller. Remember, a lot of the properties on your extrude and outline and inset tools, they can go positive and negative if you need them to go the other direction. Extrude that to whatever amount. I'm probably going to line it to where this is. This looks like it's where the crate opens. And looks like the bottom of this is chamfered too, so I might just do that right now, just for good measure. Might actually look like it's flat, but just chamfered it that way. Actually, yeah, let me undo that. I'll worry about that later. Cool, so this looks like it's a seam around here, so I might just take this guy and just chamfer him a tiny bit just to start that seam. A little bigger, maybe something like that. And I'll extrude this guy a little bit too, and then outline him. Remember, it's handy to switch viewports if you need to understand how far away things are. One of the other tools or shortcuts you guys should get to using is F3, which will toggle between wireframe and solid color. Sometimes it's really good to go into wireframe so you can see vertices behind other objects and things like that. And F4, once something is in color, F4 will put a wireframe over top of your asset. So it's really nice to work in wireframe mode a lot of times too, just so you can actually see what's going on. So get used to using those guys because they're pretty sweet. I'm going to chamfer this guy over here too. Alright, so that's my general boxy shape. I'm probably going to work on, I can work on some of that. I'm probably just going to work on this top part here, whatever this kind of extruded area is. I'm not going to try and extrude that out of my box. I'm just going to make a brand new shape to cover that up. And obviously it's going to be broken up into there, so I'll kind of start breaking up in my mind as, you know, what elements there. And because this box is symmetrical, really I'm only going to have to model 1/2, symmetry it over later on. So same thing, I'm just going to start with a thin box, align it over here so I know it's centered, and then just start placing it where I need it to be. And again, you guys are making, this is your high poly version of this thing, so do not worry about how many polygons you're using. You should worry about cleanliness to a certain degree. You know, don't add a ton of verts and edges if they're not necessary. But feel free to intersect objects and have stuff just sticking into each other. None of that matters. We're going to make a nice, clean, low poly for this, for these bad boys when we're done. Okay, so we got that. Probably squish it a little bit. Remember, your scale tool is a really good modeling tool as well for just changing scale. But you can do it on faces and vertices and stuff like that. Looking at a cube on a plane is actually kind of trippy because it like changes its proportions as you like move around. It's making me feel funny. Alright, so we got like handles over here that cut into that, but I'm not going to worry about that for now. That'll probably be something I can deal with later on. Probably even as a floater. Alright, so we got this guy here. So as soon as you grab those handles, you pull them down, and it like unlocks it upwards. So sometimes, you know, your concept's not going to have enough information for you to actually, you know, fully understand what's supposed to be there or what was there in the concept artist's mind. So you're going to have to go ahead and just kind of, you know, make up some stuff, and that is totally okay. Use my connect tool. I'm going to connect two edges there. I'm going to make some little I'm going to make some little clamps here. So these guys actually going to undo a couple steps here. I'm going to extrude this upwards first. Okay, so I'm going to connect two. Use my pinch tool to get these guys up on the side. I'm going to do this again. Connect them somewhere in there. I'm going to select these edges here. This is a handy kind of trick too. So I want these parts here to be inset. I want to kind of get rid of these guys here. So I could just delete these and then re-add polygons in here. But what you could actually do, because faces don't actually care how they're made until you actually connect them, I could just hit backspace and remove these edges here. And then I could go into vert mode and I can select that edge and that edge. Because they're only connected by one giant face, I can connect them across and do that. And it'll connect them back up together. So again, these things were connected like this. So I just hit backspace on these guys just to remove the edge, but keep the face in there. And then I'm going to select these two edges. And again, because they're connected by one giant face, they are connectable. And I hit connect, and it'll connect these guys back up. So always keep that in mind. You can you don't necessarily have to delete your stuff. You can always just hit backspace on edges and go from there. So last week we talked about hitting switching viewports a lot and then hitting Z to center on stuff. That also works while you're in edit poly mode. So if you do have a couple verts selected and you want to zoom in on them, just hit Z and it'll frame your window just on those two verts. Or faces or edges. If you do a single vert, it gets a little out of hand because it'll, oh, maybe they fixed that in this Max. I know in some cases, sometimes when you do that, it'll zoom into the vert so close that you're like in the microscopic world, and then you have to zoom out a whole bunch. So sometimes it doesn't do quite what you want, but anyways, keep that in mind. Alright, so what do we got here? We got this guy's going up here, down, and maybe this guy doesn't go quite all the way as high. Yeah, do something like that. The other thing that I like to keep handy in my modifier stack, which I didn't add last week when we were working on this stuff, is a modifier called Smooth. I think I might have mentioned it, but I didn't put it up there. What Smooth does is it just automatically adjusts all your smoothing groups to be nothing or even or whatever you want. Sometimes when you remove edges, add edges, extrude things, remove stuff, you start getting really funky looking things like this guy here. And even though I know he's right, if I hit F4, I know all those edges are right, the smoothing groups are making it look really dumb and kind of hard for me to visualize what I'm actually making. So if you throw a smooth modifier on there, it'll just reset all your smoothing groups to be kind of like 0. Or you hit the auto smooth button on there and it'll kind of smooth them on a 30-degree angle basis. It's nice to have. I like it because sometimes I just hate looking at my meshes when they're all looking kind of silly. So anyways, again, one of those workflow things. Oh yeah, no problem, man. All right, I'm actually gonna remove these guys I just made so I can chamfer these things. Sometimes when you have, so I have a bunch of edges that are all connected to these corners here. If I try and chamfer this, it's going to be a nightmare. It's going to do this to me. It's going to just start trying to divide them and shit. So what I'm going to do is before I do that, I'm just going to select all of these edges. I'm just going to backspace them just to get them out of the way for now. just so I can chamfer it without causing myself more problems. It's really more of like a remedy to not run into as many stupid issues, but sometimes it's necessary. So I got this, I have that guy going in there. I have this thing kind of clamped over. All right. Maybe that's part of that. Sometimes you just gotta stare at your concept for a while, try and figure out what the hell's going on. All right. Center box to here. So this is gonna connect. So I'm going to ring that here, it's connected, because I want a nice clean edge right there. Extrude that inwards. So if we have that as an object, extrude that here. Yeah, I think that'll work. So I could use, always remember Symmetry, don't make extra work for yourself if Symmetry can do the job. So for instance, I'm making I'm making this top piece, and it's symmetrical left and right, and more or less front and back. I'm going to have to redo that part. But I just made this one side here. Actually, I didn't chamfer it yet, so I can probably do that first. So I can chamfer this guy. Remember, you can also set the amount of edges in your chamfer. It doesn't have to just be one if you want to make a nice round one. So yeah, I'm not going to want to build this thing on the other side as well, so I'm just going to use my Symmetry tool and flip it on the y-axis here, so that way I have ones on either side. And I might go back to this guy. I might just lower these down too. So we got that. Right. So I'm going to extrude this guy to here. So sometimes you're going to run into situations like this where I've made this thing and I want to extrude this along here, but I have a face back here already. There's nothing wrong with that, so what I can do is I can extrude it all the way to this face back here, and I'm going to have to delete both of these faces, otherwise they won't be able to merge together. Like, I actually want these to be merged nicely. So now that I've deleted both of these faces, they're open. I can go to my vert mode, select these verts here. You'll see over on the bottom here there's two verts selected. I hit the weld button, which is over here, and we'll go down to just to show you the actual vert that's now selected. And these are now welded together. I'm just gonna scale those guys inwards just to get our angles. Throw my smooth modifier on there with the auto on, just to make that nice and clean. Alright. Starting to look better. Now we have this thing in here. Which I guess is like an inset and then like a hole cut in. So I could always take these guys, inset them, and then bring this up. Oops, I selected too much. So once again, move this guy up here. Just a little bit. Use my outline tool. Oh, it's a really deep extrude. That's not what I wanted. Also want to switch this to local normal, so it kind of extrudes evenly. Always remember about the different extrude types when you guys are extruding. So for instance, this is a perfect example when you want to switch. If you're extruding something that's along a rounded corner, if I open up my extrude settings and I have it set on the default, which is group, it will extrude it in like a really stupid direction. Parts of these things will go inside. This part will get thinner. It's not what I want. So what I want to do is in my extrude settings, this little guy here, switch it to local normal, and now it'll make this edge even on all ends, because you don't want to have it mess up for you, and then you have to clean that up manually. Alright, so we outline a little. So we have that guy, and then whatever the hell this thing is, I guess it's some sort of little pocket innard thing. I guess I'm kind of getting into a little bit of detailing here, so I'm not going to go too much into this thing. Yeah, that's good enough for now. All right. I'm going to attach both of these things together so I could symmetry them on the other side. And if I flip symmetry, so you might have a problem like this sometimes. So I started modeling this thing on this one side. Now I want this whole object on the other side of this box. And if I throw a symmetry on there, it's only going up to here because my pivot's there. So I could turn on symmetry and try and move this thing to be, more or less where this is. But if you want to make it perfect, what you can do is before you symmetry this object, you can change its pivot to be the same pivot as this box. So with it selected, you go to this third little part here in your control panel called Hierarchy, and go to Effect Pivot Only. And then when that's on, you now have free reign over moving this pivot around. You don't want to do it manually, so we're going to use the Harry Potter Quick Align again. I'm going to click that, and now because we're in pivot, we're actually going to align our pivot to another object. So with that selected, I'm going to select this box, and it's going to align my pivot to this box now. And the sweet part about that is now when I symmetry, it's going to be exactly in the center, and I won't have to worry about eyeballing it and stuff like that. So aligning pivots to other things is really handy, especially if you want to rotate things around something or array them or symmetry. Always a good thing to remember. All right, so we got that guy. I'm going to work on all that inner detail later on. I'm going to inset this thing here. I like this. It's got these crazy sons of bitches in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ring my, or select both sides of my box here. And I'm just going to connect them once, just so I have a nice line in the center. And then I'm going to chamfer them. So I get two edges. I'm basically trying to align them to, it's hard to see, but there's this little black area there and that one there. Just trying to make lines that are going to align to that. So I'm going to do this on the other side too. I hit ring, select. Actually, I just go in my top viewport and just marquee select by clicking and holding all those edges. I hit C to connect, and then chamfer them so they're more or less. And I want this and this to be the same distance because it's technology. When you guys are modeling your sci-fi stuff too, remember to stick to really clean angles when you're doing your stuff. So stick to like 45s and 90s. Don't try and just like eyeball a lot of angles. Make sure your anything that is on an angle is parallel to anything else that's on an angle beside it to some degree. Because if you just start eyeballing and using a whole bunch of different ones, it's going to look very kind of floaty and not really as it should as far as tech stuff goes. Okay, so we have this guy and this guy. So I want to extrude these guys inwards because that's kind of, you know, it's going to be kind of like this, right? So it's going to be this inner area there. But you can obviously see there's a problem when I just try and extrude this one thing. It's going at a stupid angle, and then this whole bottom part is not really being utilized. So what I'm going to do is select this whole base and these little side bits and extrude them all together on a local normal. So that way they're all coming in at the same kind of time and distance. And then when I go to my front, I can lower these guys back down. Now I can scale these guys. There we go. And I think I'm going to do the same thing-ish for these guys. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to chamfer this top bit. There, just a little bit like that. And for this bottom part, I think I'm going to extrude it a little. And what if I select these two, just scale them in by 96%. You see the percentage of your scales on the very bottom if you want to make sure that you're scaling by the same amount. And remember, if you're trying to pick your angles properly, you can always use the anti-aliasing to make sure that your angles are nice 45-degree angles. 45 might be too much for what I'm trying to do, but maybe not. All right. So we got those guys, they're kind of in there. I might actually do the same thing as I did for the top and extrude all these guys inwards. Maybe outline them a little. Yeah, outline. And then flatten. Remember, if you ever want to flatten anything, you can select all of the verts or edges and use the scale tool just to scale it all the way down and flatten it. And then I might extrude this again and outline it. and save your max file. Alright, cool. So that's kind of my base box. Next we'll talk about making handles and types and things, which I'm sure you guys are going to have lots of.